Although I usually don't like Gibson solid body guitars, I decided to give this one a try because Rick Beato said it has great upper fret access. And if you watch the channel, you know lately I've been on an upper fret access guitar kick lately. Moreover, as a current university professor looking to become a former university professor, Rick Beato getting a signature model guitar is quite inspiring to me personally. Now, this video is not sponsored. I've never met Rick Beato before, but I think it's amazing that he's donating his royalties to charity, and he seems like a nice man, so I'd love to chat sometimes, Rick, if you're watching this. So, as a self proclaimed modern guitar lover, you may assume I dislike the headstock, but truth be told, I always thought that Gibson headstocks looked pretty cool. The simple black with the gold logo was elegant, and Rick Beato's signature fits well. And I'm also happy that he didn't plaster his logo all over the place, like, on the fretboard or on the back. It's just right here, and that's great. And as someone who's used to modern tuners, these Gibson design vintage machines feel interesting. As I turn them, they feel almost softer and less mechanical than Spurzels or Schallers or Godos, Grovers. But that's not a bad thing or a good thing, it's just an observation. They're plenty smooth, and in combination with the Graphtec nut, which I'm happy to see, this guitar stays in tune very well. And to be completely honest, as a Gibson hater, I was expecting the G and D strings to not hold tune because of the string pull and all of that stuff, but I was wrong. Now, before we continue to the neck, I should let you know that I've played all types of guitars when I was a kid, a lot of Squires and Strats, and even recently up to $4,000 Aristides guitars. But throughout these 18 years, I've never owned a Gibson or an Epiphone, nor have I ever wanted to. I can't get into the full story, but I discussed it in a recent podcast. You can check out the link below. But I say this because I want to be honest about my lack of experience with these type of guitars. So for all of the Gibson aficionados, I very much welcome your comments, your corrections, your input as I start to nitpick this guitar. So as we move down the neck, there's a lot of good, there's a lot of confusing, and to be honest, there's a bit of bad. So the basics, let's get that out of the way. 1.69 inch nut width, basic Indian rosewood fingerboard with acrylic dot inlays, fine. 12-inch radius, 24 3/4 inch scale length, cool. Glued in set neck, slim taper neck profile, medium jumbo nickel frets, and a very, very thin satin finish on the back of the neck that leaves your hands feeling very sticky and smelly after every use. Okay, so those are the specs, and as a modern guitar guy, I like stainless steel frets, I like composite fingerboards and so on, but I understand that this guitar isn't supposed to be that. So I can't sit here and complain about a fish not having wings because I like to fly. It doesn't make any sense. I don't have a problem with the vintage spec. But I do have a problem with a guitar of this price range that lacks attention to detail. And I'll give you some price comparisons in a second, but here are a few of the flaws. If you look closely where the nut meets the neck, you'll notice that it's not straight and it clearly wasn't cleaned up. Okay, fine, no big deal. It doesn't impact the playability. Okay. But then you look closely at the fretboard and you see there are obvious tooling marks all over the rosewood up and down the fingerboard. But hey, you don't feel it anyway, no big deal. Then you look at the side dots and notice most of them aren't proper circles. You go to the neck joint and you see that there are more paint flaws. And to be honest, we could completely dismiss all of this and just say it doesn't affect playability. Who cares? You're just being nitpicky. But then we get to the frets and, well, okay, before we talk about the frets, let me explain one thing for 1 second. So if you've ever taken a neurology or a physiology course or something similar, you will have seen something called a sensory homunculus model. And in short, this is basically a visual representation of how the human body would look if everything was sized based on how sensitive each area of the body is. And that has to do with different nerve endings and things of that nature. And when you see the model and how large the hands and lips are, it's quite clear why woodwind players obsess over their reeds, which obviously go in their mouth. And it's also clear why guitarists obsess over fretboards and fretwork and necks, okay? So with that in mind, these frets are definitely good. The leveling is good, and they are mostly smooth up and down the neck. However, after a couple of hours of playing this guitar and my different practice sessions, there were a couple of times when moving up the fretboard, I felt the poke. Did that slight prick, ruin my hands? No. Did it puncture the skin? No. Is it impossible to play? Definitely not. It's definitely a good fret job. But most importantly, I've never felt anything like that on the guitars that I have that are even in the $700-800 range. So, okay, let's talk about price and range and signature models and all of that for a second. So as you know, this guitar is $2,000. Of course, some of that is due to it being a signature model, and the regular Les Pauls of this type are around $1,800. So you can say we're paying an 11.1 repeating percent difference for the Rick Beato name, and I am 100% fine with that, especially since he's donating his royalties to charity. Very commendable again. In fact, I'd even say that compared to other brands, this isn't bad at all. Gibson did a great job with the price compared to their other guitars. For example, I have this PRS Silver Sky SE model. This is a John Mayer signature guitar made by PRS. These go for $850 when they're new. And other similar SE models go for $650. Now, to be fair, those SE models have different pickups. This has more pickups, this has other details, but fine. Let's just say that this is the same as the other SE models, and let's give that one to Gibson. That would mean that this, compared to the other PRS SEs, is a 31% difference, okay? 31% higher than the other guitars that are similar by PRS. So Gibson's 11% is quite nice. Okay, fine. I have yet another signature model right over here. This is the D'Angelico Bob Ware Premier Signature Bedford. New, these are $1,000. The regular Bedford model is $850, which is a 17.6% difference. Let's ignore it has special pickups. Let's ignore the fancy configuration and electronics. And let's just say that for the Bob Ware name, the signature model name, you pay a 17.6% difference. And with all of that in mind, the Gibson being an 11.1 repeating percent difference is a good deal. But here's the thing. This $1,000 D'Angelico guitar and the $850 PRS guitar right over there in the corner that I showed you a few seconds ago, both of those guitars are not made in America. This one is made in America. And both of them have far superior neck jobs, fretwork, everything for half the price and less than half the price for the John Mayer guitar. And for me, when I'm comparing those three signature model guitars, it's really just about the attention to detail. When we look at the PRS, the side dots are good, there's no sharp fret edges, and it's a great guitar. Okay, the PRS is a bolt-on guitar. We can say that bolt-ons are easier, and thus, they had an easier time making that guitar less expensive and having, good quality control. Fine. The D'Angelico guitar, that's a neck-through design. The neck-through is far better than this neck-through, but we'll get to that later. And the quality is way better. It has an even nicer double binding right here, okay? And again, overall, the fretwork, the binding, everything about the neck on that guitar is better than everything about the neck on this guitar, and that one is half the price. Also, this isn't a complaint, but more of an observation. The Silver Sky has medium frets, the D'Angelico has medium vintage frets, and the Gibson has medium jumbo frets. But the Gibson frets compared to the others are absolutely tiny. Not just thin in a medium sense, but also really, really short. And I know that's a vintage spec thing, but the D'Angelico is also a vintage spec in terms of the frets. So I don't know, maybe someone in the comments below can explain what that whole situation is about. So let's wrap up the next section with some positives. The neck shape on this guitar is very, very nice. It's not too thin. It's not overly thick. For me, it fits in my hand quite nicely. The satin is nice if you like satin feels and if you don't mind your hands getting sticky and having to wash them after every time you touch this guitar. And the fretwork is acceptable, but again, it feels more like fretwork that belongs on a guitar for under $1,000, not $2,000. Okay, so as I mentioned earlier, one of the reasons I was interested in this guitar is because the high fret access. and specifically because Rick Beato said this.
Gives you really easy access to the high frets. I like soloing up in this area of the guitar on the low strings. You'll see me play up here all the time, and the reason is it's easy to play.
Now, if you look closely when Rick talks about the high fret access, he doesn't just put his hands at the upper G, B, and E strings in the high frets. He also shows his hands moving along the lower strings at the upper frets. So to test this upper fret access, I'm going to play some advanced walking bass ideas that use full chords for each bass note that I actually learned from the absolute best walking bass course I ever found online in books ever, period. And that course is over at andreflip.com/courses. First link below. So in terms of chords, I'd say the upper fret access is good. But Rick Beato also has shown that he has no trouble shredding these upper frets. But for me, that's honestly a struggle. I won't blame the guitar for that. I have a mostly legato style. Even when I'm playing up on the frets, whenever I'm playing fast, it's legato. And that's just very difficult on any guitar, unless it's a modern guitar, of course. Okay, so let's see how this upper fret access compares to other guitars. So when we compare this guitar to, say, a regular Les Paul, a Tele, even a Strat, this upper fret access is amazing. But taken in isolation, it's only very good, which is still good. So for example, we can get our thumb way up here, and we can get to all of these frets very, very easily without encountering the heel joint. And if you play the guitar with a traditional, diagonal hand style like this is totally fine. But if you try to play the guitar with your hand perpendicular to the ground and you try to get any motion, you're going to immediately start hitting this upper horn when moving this way with your hand in this position. Also, if you try to play even simple chords on the upper frets, you're going to quickly run into this horn right here, right around the, 14th fret or so. So really, although we can get our hand up here to all of the frets very easily, this little horn, it might not seem like much, but your hand is going to be hitting that if you're trying to move your fingers, if you're not playing them in a diagonal fashion. And I won't talk poorly about the heel joint because this is a traditional guitar and Rick Beato wanted a traditional guitar. But the D'Angelico guitar is also a somewhat traditional brand. They've been around for a long time, and the upper fret access and the heel joint is way, way better. Okay, let's move on. When we look at the body, I think that this blue is absolutely gorgeous. It's very, very pretty. And, the guitar doesn't have any comfort carving, but it's not supposed to. The edges are nicely rounded, even though it doesn't have any comfort carving. And from what I can tell, from what I've researched, this guitar is slightly thinner than the other styles of guitars in this same kind of configuration. Traditional tail pieces are totally fine. Traditional volume tone knobs, totally fine. Traditional three-way switch, you can't complain. The pick guard is actually a 1, 2, 3, 4 ply pick guard, and it looks very, very elegant and very, very nice. So the body, the hardware, the volume tone knob, the switches, no complaints there whatsoever. Let's talk about the pickups. So I only have one other guitar that has P90s, and that's the D'Angelico guitar I've been showing you throughout this time. But those are, Duncan designed, stacked, noiseless P90 pickups. And these are like old school, real vintage P90 pickups by Gibson, obviously. And the sound is completely, completely different. The first thing that I noticed is that these pickups clean up pretty much better than any guitar I've ever played in my life. So if I have a nice edge of breakup tone going and I roll down the volume just a bit, I get a little bit less breakup. If I roll down even more, I get a very clean tone. But throughout that entire, breakup to clean tone, the pickups still stay nice and fat and thick, and I'm really, really enjoying that. So here's a clip of me playing, something like the same lick over and over with different levels of the volume knob on the different pickups. So if it still isn't clear, I'll just come out and say it. I like these pickups a lot. To me, it's the best part of this guitar, apart from the really, really nice vintage case with the brushed gold latches that the guitar comes with. Now, there's something else really interesting about these pickups that I never really experienced before with any other guitar, but that's going to require a little bit of a story. So back when I was in high school, I had a guitar teacher in Manhattan named Bob D. Great, like old school fusion jazz type player. And I'll never forget this. One day I went to him for a lesson and he said to me something along the lines of, "Hey, I'm going to buy a new guitar. Do you have anything in mind? Like, what do you recommend?" Right? And I'm pretty sure he asked me that because when I was 16, 17 years old, every time I went to a guitar lesson, I pretty much had a new guitar because I was constantly trading guitars on Craigslist and, using all of my small job money to improve guitars and all of that stuff. So I said to him, "Hey, yeah, the Ibanez S series guitars are really, really cool." And the reason I like the S series back then is because they're so paper thin and they have that really nice floating tremolo, and I'm into all of that stuff. And I'll never forget what he said in reply. He said, "No, I'm looking for a guitar I can dig into more." Now, at the time, I didn't understand what he meant with that statement. And to be completely honest, throughout my guitar journey, I didn't understand either, because when it comes to my playing, I've been always focused on having a very light touch and getting a very mellow, smooth, clean left hand style, and even very light with the right hand. That's just the style that I've been trying to cultivate, and it's just what I like to play personally. But when I picked up this guitar, for some reason, for the first time, I started playing totally different than I've ever played before. And keep in mind, this guitar has the same light strings, 8s. And I talk about this a little bit more in my upcoming Guitarcraft newsletter you can subscribe to for free. It comes out every Saturday morning. But let me just show you what I mean here. So this guitar right here, as you may or may not know, this is my #1 guitar. It is a Parker Nightfly that I have custom pickups in and all types of fun custom stuff with. So I'm going to play you a lick that I've been working on lately in my practice. I'm going to play for you on this guitar. Check it out. Now, if I take the same lick, okay, and I play it on my D'Angelico guitar, notice how the Nightfly and the D'Angelico, when I play them, pretty much sound the same if I'm playing the same lick. And finally, I'm going to play that lick for you on this guitar. And what I'm trying to get at here is that when I play it on this guitar, I naturally want to dig in more. I naturally want to vary the dynamic in a way that I usually don't do in my guitar playing. Okay, I hope you were able to see what I was getting at there. Now I'm going to play just one string with different variations with my right hand and a pick. And I want you to see that no matter how soft I play or no matter how loud I play, with just this one note, the guitar always hangs with me. And then when we also add in that we can change the intensity of the distortion or the overdrive by just rolling down the volume, and we get that nice cleanup, I think this guitar definitely has a vibe that I've never experienced on any of my other guitars. And I think that makes this guitar really, really special. That being said, the quality of the neck for the price isn't great, and I don't believe the upper fret access is anything special. Check out my gear playlist linked up here. By the way, I'm Andre Flood, and I'll talk to you soon.